Okay, so let's just start off with turning. And again, just trying to get it activating the muscles in the lower back. So the action starts there if you can. It's just placement of the mind, really. Remember, knocking the gate of life. The gate of life is the mid-leg. So the hand that goes behind makes a loose fist and just gently strikes the mid-leg, whilst the hand in front stretches. So this side of my body is stretching and this side of my body is contracting into the fist. And just get activity coming into the feet. So here, this foot is stretching the toes, and then the toes clench to draw me across into it, and these toes stretch. So you're doing this all the time with your feet and your hands. So we're working the toes into the ground. Just imagine you're on wet sand and you're just sort of wriggling into the sand with your feet. So what we aim to do all the time is just activate the spirit. So basically the spirit comes alive when you're interested in something outside yourself. And so here we just have to find points of interest, really, so that we don't start wandering mind. So just feeling the feet, feeling these muscles in the lower back, and just feeling this, generally the spirit activating. When the spirit activates, you just feel just more alive and more intense. So maybe your eyes are shine or they bulge. You tend to get more sunk because you want to engage with everything that's you're connected to. So really engaging with the ground. And just try and let the head go with it. You want this sense that there's all these swirling ribbons swirling around you. You're almost being cocooned in these sort of gossamer fabrics that are swirling around you. And as you get more sunk, just push the min-meng backwards. So you're just trying to reduce the lordosis. And just feel the spine splitting at the min meng. So you have two minds really, one with each part of the spine. So one with the spine that comes up from the min meng. So that's the one we're used to. But also one with the spine beneath the min meng. So that part has to dig down. That's the part that shows real interest in the ground and in what's happening with your feet and under your feet. So that's the part we're not normally very good at. So we just want to concentrate on that. So I'm getting down into the ground, down into the ground. Okay, so let's just bring it to riding horse. So again, just feeling it splitting at the min meng. And then it's just those two tentacles that come out of your sacrum. One reaching down here, one reaching down here. We just want to feel the mind that's with the bottom part of the spine is quite different than the mind that's with the top part of the spine. So we just want to just feel it so that we can activate it quite easily. Okay, now let's just breathe it. And again, just keep with the lower part of the spine. So just make sure it doesn't lose the feet. So this is producing a circle, and this is producing a straight line. So the image is really like the sphincter. So here you're activating the ring muscles, so the anus, the urethra, and the dantian, tightening them. And then here you release them so that something can come out. So here, tightening. So you're becoming like a circle, and then here, releasing. Tightening, and feel that when you tighten, it allows everything around it to relax. So the hips can relax, so your knees can go out a little bit more when you tighten. And then when you relax the tightening, the knees will tend to come in order to produce this line that comes out of the hole. So here, tightening to produce these tight circles, and then here, extending. So make sure the body doesn't come up, yeah, when you extend. So here we have to make sure that we don't come out of our root, that our bum doesn't stick out. And then here we have to make sure we don't straighten the legs and come up physically. Okay, so let's just bring it back to riding horse. Again, just getting the sacrum feeling as though it's relaxing down and splitting into the two legs through the buttocks, the hamstrings, and into the heels. So that bottom part of the spine from the min-meng down, it should feel sort of very active, but in a very different way than the activity here. So the top part of the spine is related much more to like our sense of self, our sense of self-image and self-projection. The bottom part of the spine is like this sort of, it just wants to burrow, just wants to get down and connect to the ground. Okay, now let's do the breathing again, but now just reversing it. So now breathing in as we pull the belly in. So take an out breath and then breathing in and just pulling everything in, and then breathing out and sending everything out. So I'm pulling everything in, including the breath, and then I'm letting everything out, including the breath. Okay, so now it's back to riding horse. Okay. And now let's just bringing the foot up and placing it front of the foot first, and then just drawing yourself into it. So you just want to sort of create like a sense of hunger in your feet, like your foot is really hungry for that ground. So you're moving with spirit. You're really, you're pulling. It's not a spirit that fires out like you're attacking. It's more a spirit that sort of opens up in order to swallow. So something here really opens, and then I just draw myself into the foot. So I'm enclosing. It's like I'm getting around the back of something and bringing it in. So this is very important. So this is how we'd like to travel through the world. You know, so you're not traveling by projecting a spirit out. You're traveling by reaching forwards and getting your spirit behind and then pulling it in, which actually pulls you forwards. So it's a very different way. It's like it's careful. It's quite interesting with the cats here, because there's loads of feral cats, and if they haven't seen you, they'll just be sauntering along as though they don't have a care in the world. But then as soon as they see you, it's like they start moving really differently. So that's what we would like. We'd like to be able to just switch like that. And it's very much front of the foot. I have to put the front of the foot down before the rest of the foot goes down. So I don't want to just clump with my heel, because that's just really ignorant. You know? So I'm drawing, and then the heel is the last thing that goes down, only when I'm really sure. I'm just feeling how it's as my weight goes into the heel that this side is allowed to activate. And then as I go into this heel, then this side can activate. So there's always spirit in presence. It's just switching from foot to foot. So the spirit is breathing the same as your body is breathing. Yeah, and spirit is not highfalutin. It's not esoteric or strange. We just use it all the time. Whenever you're engaged in something that becomes interesting, then you're using spirit. You know, if you're watching a movie, chatting with a friend, you know. So what we want to do is practice spirit when we don't have anything interesting. So we just find that, in a sense, the most difficult place to practice spirit is when you're on your own and there's nothing to do. So I wait. Yeah, so I'm pulling my body across, but more importantly, when you repeat and repeat, then the spine starts to soften, and you're drawing, extending the lower part of the spine down into the foot. So all the time, you know, we start an exercise, and to start with, we're just trying to get it right, if you like. So we have to just keep repeating and repeating so that it can start to soften us. And then it will just get a lot deeper and just become a lot more interesting. So here we are. Yeah, so we have to be really happy to be on one foot. So you have to feel the value. You know, you have to fall in love with spirit and just feel how, you know, when it's active, you're just a different creature. You're a better creature than normal. And the reason that spirit isn't there all the time is because we repress it. The ego tries its best to find itself in situations where spirit is definitely not required. Because spirit, if you like, is like the only enemy, natural enemy to the ego now. Yeah. And it's very much the energy of those sphincters. So it's sort of circular. It's this pulls in, and it's that draws me down into the foot and lifts this foot up, yeah? So you're becoming like a ball, but a compact ball. You've really drawn in, yeah? Okay. And now just very gently, just moving side to side, but again, with the pulling leg. So this foot stretches open, the toes really extend, and then they start curling up. And it's that curling up that starts me moving. Whilst the toes are extending, I'm just really sinking even more into this leg. And then as they start curling, it moves me across. So just feel the two different aspects of spirit. So there's one aspect of spirit which really stretches the hand and the foot open. That's a bit like screaming, like if you really wanted to do that in a very intense way, you'd yell. And then there's the spirit that starts the fingers curling, starts the mouth closing around the prey. So, so something really opens and then something closes. It's like a relaxation, but it's the spirit changes. It wraps around. It's basically come forwards, it's found something, and it wraps around it, like the amoeba. You know, when the amoeba sort of meets a lump of potential food, it just surrounds it, and then that bit of food becomes part of it. It's the same here. It's a very primitive form of locomotion, but it's because it's so primitive, it's really primal, it's very deep inside us. So something in me swells and I just include, I bring it in. Yeah, so when we feel it, I mean, for me, it's just very interesting and it just feels true, yeah? But what tends to happen is as we become interested and excited with it, it tends to bring us all up into the upper body. So we just have to make sure that the bottom part of the spine, which remember is quite a bit smaller than the top part of the spine, is even more active, really. So it has to compensate for its lack of length. So it has to become really active. So my legs and my feet, especially the feet, yeah. So the feet, we want to feel as though they're sort of free. You know, your feet can wriggle on the ground, especially when it becomes empty, and the toes can really stretch apart and extend. And so what we'd like is what's happening in the upper body to simply be a reflection of what's happening in the lower body. It's in the legs and the feet before it's in the arms and the hands. So that's difficult. You have to really concentrate on it. And obviously having it in the arms and the hands is a lot better than not having it at all. So again, it's like a softening. You know, so if it's all in the arms and the hands, it just becomes a little bit sort of aggressive. So when I take it down into the legs, it just softens it. So I can just have almost like a whisper of it happening in my upper body. It's all in the legs, the feet, and the part of the spine that's beneath the min name. Ooh. Yeah, so basically we just don't want any display to bring us out of our root. So what's happening in the upper body should assist my sinking into the ground. If I get too much here, obviously I come up. I want to feel that this is happening because this is really reaching down into the ground. So there's always a balance. And that balance is possible because basically that we're in two minds all the time in Taoism. I have a mind with the top part of my spine, the upper body, and a mind with the bottom part of the spine, the lower body. And I just need a balance. It's not just a balance. There's always the feeling that what's happening in the legs is responsible for what's happening in the upper body. So, yeah, so the lower body generates the energy, but it also regulates the spirit, really. So I don't get carried away with it. I don't become self-indulgent. I mean, it's so easy for all of this just to subtly slip out of spirit and into serving the ego, serving self-image. So that's the function of the concept of balance, really. You know, I'm not doing it in order to create a good feeling for myself. It's an ethical thing. What's regulating me and regulating the energy is my desire to create a balance, my need to balance. Because if you're balanced, then basically it can go on forever. It doesn't need to stop. When it gets out of balance, then it will tend to sort of wobble and fall to pieces eventually, explode or implode. So, wow. So in the sense, I mean, Taoism, it's just ethics, yeah? Correct action, right action. And it's just, you know, the ethical choice, the good choice is the one that creates the balance, maintains the balance. Okay, so let's just bring it back. Again, just feeling these tentacles just reaching down. Yeah, so it's the sinking, obviously, that just requires the strength in the legs. Okay, and now let's just twist. So just gently, so trying not to move the hips too much. So we're getting those muscles in the lower back, just activating. And remember those muscles in the lower back, they're thickest there in the lumbar spine, but they extend all the way down to the heels and all the way up to the top of the head and down the arms. Yeah, so when we practice something, then it gets softer. But what we have to make sure is that that softness isn't a weakening. It hasn't become softer because I've let the energy dwindle, because my mind is thinking about something else. So that's not softness at all. If anything, it's getting more intense. What makes it soft is that it stops being an external action. It stopped being in the upper body or in the arms and shoulders. It's just getting deeper, closer to the spine. And that's causing it to become even more sort of animalistic and intense and of those deep, unconscious primal drives. So it's like the softness of a prowling tiger. So basically just let it become a meditation. So meditation is all about clearing the mind so that you can look at mind rather than looking at the contents of the mind. So basically it's all about moods really. So how is my mood shifting as I activate those muscles in my lower back? What is the mood of having your tail reaching down into your heels? Yeah. So all of these exercises, we just start off in a certain place, and then just with repetition, they all come to the same place really, which is just the place of breathing, spirit, and single weightedness of the two sides of the body operating alternately. So one side is closing, one side is opening. We're just starting from different places, but it all integrates by the time you've been doing the exercise a few minutes, and then they all feel the same, just subtle variations. Because really it's just one thing. It's just, how do you move? How do you move forwards? Even if you're sitting still and not moving ostensibly at all, you're still moving through time. So you're still navigating a passage. And of course, when you're sitting still, what's moving you through time is the breathing. So as you practice each exercise, if you can keep your mind relatively present, then you'll just become more and more possessed by it until that's all there is. And then there's just no room for the self. In order to be with yourself, you have to be without anything else, really. You have to sort of disconnect from everything else. It's like, when you get in the car to drive home from work, and then you get home and park the car, and you just think, shit, I don't recall a single event on that journey, because you've been thinking to yourself the whole time. So we just want to be just really attentive, but not just attentive to what's outside of my body, but attentive to these interesting processes that are going on inside. So just the lower back, just sort of flexing in and out of flatness, the feet grabbing and massaging the ground, the tail reaching down into the feet. So there's so many things we can just you can just rotate through them with the mind. So this is just the way of practice. And then if you can keep your mind on it, it just becomes sort of more intense in a sort of gentle way. And then every now and then, the work that you're doing breaks through some sort of resistance that you didn't realize was there. And you just enter a different realm. So you get insights which you can then work on. So the work feeds itself really, but you have to be able to stay with it mentally. If you're just going through the motions, then in a sense, it's doing more harm than good. Okay, so let's just bring it back. Okay, and now let's just go backwards and forwards a little bit. And just with the arms, yeah? It's exactly the same thing. You're just got a front and a back leg now instead of a left leg and a right leg. Again, this sense that you're pulling yourself into the leg. Something in me is becoming round. And it's that roundening that's actually drawing me, rather than the straightening that's pushing me. So all the time you're becoming round. But obviously to become round, you have to first become straight. So you're not being round, you're becoming round. And you'll see always slipping in and out of these phases. So in the Tai Chi classics, it says, keep to a yielding mind, which basically just means be with the roundening phase, be with the phase that's becoming round, the phase that's moving you into the empty foot, towards the empty foot. Yeah, so there are two phases all the time, you know, the yin and the yang. And we tend to have, the way we live our lives basically is topsy-turvy, it's upside down. The principles have become inverted or reversed. So what happens is there's, of those two, of the yin and the yang, we've tended to privilege the wrong one. Yes. So we tend to privilege the yang, if you like. And we really need to slip back into the other one. Yeah, so it's the male and the female, like the difference between the size of the sperm and the size of the egg. Sperm is tiny compared to the egg. Yeah, so as Castaneda said, the universe is predominantly female. So what men have tried, men are frightened of the female. So what they've tried to do is create masculine environments. So like the city, with its straight lines and its grey surfaces. And so we tend to privilege the upper body and ignore the lower body. So in Tai Chi, we're just trying to switch everything around. And it's a lifetime's work because it's become so ingrained. And then the masculine, really, the masculine is just spirit, but it has to be in the right balance, otherwise it just becomes solid. So as I'm sinking into this leg, it's just becoming heavy and settled and still. And then something just wakes up here, and that's spirit. Yeah? And then that can just, if it becomes too much, it just comes out of balance. It's really delicate and fine. But then that's the thing that actually starts me moving. It's just something in the empty side is allowed to just open up and just, ooh, and then John always used to say that like male softness So basically that sort of delicate spirit is just really amazing. You know, when you meet someone that has it. So something here is just, whoa, and then it doesn't want to stay around for too long. It's like the little fairy. Whoa. Okay, now let's just try the other side. Again, just let it start from the base. Just move to start with, and then just let it liven up. As John was saying, let it enhearten. Yeah, so when we practice, what we'd like really is for every practice session to just eventually find its way into this very light masculine spirit. And then you can let it, leave it, yeah? You just sort of allowing something to just become alive inside you. It is like the butterfly, or like Tinkerbell. Monique had a friend from Costa Rica staying with her. She had a daughter with her who's about 6 or so. And the daughter was telling me how she says, "We're doing Peter Pan. I'm in Peter Pan." I says, "Oh, are you Wendy?" She says, "No, I'm a fairy." So it's like, I was watching I went to the Tel Aviv museum, the art museum. And like the only picture that really shocked me, that really took me really, was a Francis Bacon, just a small one of those 3 studies for a portrait of his lover at the time. So I was watching a movie on a documentary on Francis Bacon, and it's just the way in those sort of gay affectations that were just very subtle with him, because he didn't like that idea of the English Queen. But just there all the same, and just such an intense spirit. And a beautiful man, yeah? Just not afraid to channel his darkness, which I think a lot of art now just tries its best to be. Tries its best to avoid anything real. So it's what I would call grace. So it's like as you work, this sort of delicate energy is just casting off you all the time, like the dust off the butterfly's wings. All these little tiny scales. Wow. Wow. And he was related to the other Francis Bacon, you know, the one that was, they thought for a while had written Shakespeare's plays. And his best friend was Lucian Freud. And of course, Lucian Freud was Sigmund Freud's grandson, I think, wasn't he? Ooh. Okay. So let's just wind it down. So. Yeah. So in order to get the lower part of your body active, basically the upper part of your body just needs to relax and quieten down. So this is really what happens. You know, it seems that, you know, when you're meditating, it's just boring because there's nothing. Yeah, it's just sort of, you're just aiming for emptiness. But it's only of like the upper body, and then you can really feel then your spine beginning to burrow into the ground, and then the whole thing just becomes really sort of active, but in a really subtle way. You know, so came across a translation of the Tao Te Ching recently that I hadn't seen before. I mean, it's quite old, I think, it's 75, I think. And it's what I liked about it in the first chapter, you know, when it says, you know, the Tao is the, you know, like the mother of all things or whatever. So he distinguishes between the unknowable and the knowable. Yeah. So basically, the Tao is basically the unknowable. We can't know it. We don't have the capacity. There's so much that we just cannot know. And so when you're sitting there in meditation, in a sense, it's those occasions when basically it just seems like nothing is happening. That's when you're going deep. That's when you're allowing something, you're allowing the unknowable to operate by letting this be quiet. So you're not being busy with something else. You're just being empty and vacant. And then the energy can just work. It can do its work. And maybe you'll just feel that you'll think, oh yeah, shit, something's happening. I better be quiet. I better be respectful. And maybe you won't. And you won't necessarily feel good afterwards. You know, I think, you know, we have to appreciate that this sort of work is not for us. Yeah, we're serving something. You know, so the normal plaint of the upper middle classes now is, you know, sort of what's in it for me? What am I getting out of it? Yeah. And you can't know that, you know, it's something you'll get something out of it, but you can't say what it is. Yeah. And if you want to say what it is, then you won't get it. Yeah. So it really has to be that really sort of misty, sort of unknown, unknowable. Yeah. So you've got the known, the unknown, and the unknowable. The unknowable is like a misty realm. You can slip in and out of it. You know when you've been there, but you don't know what's happened when you've been there. And you normally know that you've been there because you feel fucking awful afterwards, yeah? But as you begin to digest that, you realize, oh shit, something really important happened, yeah? So, you know, like Nietzsche again, let's bring it up. Just, reducing meditation to a cure for dyspepsia. Yeah. So not just the dyspeptic gut, but the dyspeptic temper. Yeah. So when you call someone dyspeptic, it just means they're just irritable and angry all the time. Yeah. So as you meditate, that your gut is allowed to just sort of settle, but also your character, your mind is just allowed to settle. And then you just digest. Yeah. You digest well. So from being dyspeptic, you become eupeptic. He talks about digestion and he talks about rumination. Saying this is what thinkers don't do anymore. They don't ruminate. Yeah. So they're very similar, digestion and but rumination, this sense that it's all passing from stomach to stomach. Yeah. It needs slightly different environments to get all the nutrients out. And they're beautiful concepts. Okay, so let's finish.